So on this 38 Studios thing, we got a really smart guy who understands how to get the right answers on the numbers. Welcome into My State of Mind. I am Dan York. Gary Sasse from the Hassenfeld Leadership Institute is my guest, former revenue director, player in the Kacheri administration. Been a guest on the program prior, but I'm really interested to see what he thinks about some of the developments where the leadership of the House of Representatives is actually headed to New York as we speak for meetings tomorrow to get real answers on whether we're going to be all messed up if we don't pay those 38 Studios bonds. So we'll get to that coming up toot sweet. So let's go to the rundown and see what's happening. This is really weird. You want to talk about one not knowing what the other's doing. This, duh. I mean, we all knew this. I remember the day they decided this. I'll tell you what this is just coming up here. Yes, the Ashley grad has resigned, and now it seems like exactly the right thing to do, according to Mayor Taveras. This is an inconsistent problem in America and a preview of what we might be dealing with in the future when it comes to health care. And yeah, you're still missing some hockey? We got some hockey. All right, let us dig in. Let's find out what we got going on here. Yeah, did you see this top page in the newspaper today? I found this to be fascinating. State rehires a company being sued over 38 Studios. Understand that First Southwest is a local company out of Lincoln that's been a long-time advisor to the state of Rhode Island, mostly the Treasury, on what to do with bonds. You know, how to rate bonds, how to buy bonds, how to transact bonds. They made or offered an opinion on 38 Studios back a few years ago that kind of was thumbs up, right? So in the ongoing nonsense about 38 Studios, there's Kurt Schilling, you know, the massive online gaming thing that went bust, and we owe $75 million to the bondholders if we pay it, da-da-da-da-da. The Chafee administration is suing everybody under the sun they can on this whole matter, right, including 38 Studios. And First Southwest, as an advisor to the Economic Development Corporation, is a defendant in the lawsuit. Meanwhile, on the Treasury side, their deal has been renewed to continue to advise, and they make anywhere from $150,000 to $250,000 a year giving us advice on how we ought to transact financially. So the governor's suing the company, the treasurer is rehiring the company. Now, I have no opinion on whether they're viable or not because, you know, it's a mess, but you'd think that the treasurer and the governor would be talking to each other. In general, seems to me, either we don't sue them or we don't hire them. But suing them and hiring them, that doesn't make any sense to me. But these days, who knows? Next item, doggone it, we knew this. We knew it the day they doubled the fees at our beaches. They'd screw it up. Tim White has this story.
Doubling the cost of a season pass to Rhode Island's beaches did have a desired effect. It increased revenue to the state's coffers. But these numbers suggest there was also a consequence. Fewer people went to the state's beaches.
This weekend, all state beaches will begin charging you to park. In 2011, the governor and lawmakers doubled the cost of a season pass and weekend daily parking rates. A state Senate fiscal office report reveals as a result, there was a drop in the number of people parking at our state beaches. Take a look. In 2010, before the rate increase, more than 217,000 people bought a daily parking pass at all state beaches, and 20,700 people bought a season pass. But then in 2013, those numbers fell to 145,000 daily passes and just 17,000 season passes.
And if you go to Scarborough Beach, the parking lot across the street, they call it overflow. Take a look at that parking lot. What will you see? You'll see grass growing through the asphalt.
State Senator Ed O'Neill has submitted a bill that would return beach parking fees back to pre-2011 rates.
What does that say? It says it's not being used. It's not being used because not as many people are going to the beach.
The hard numbers support his anecdotal evidence. 8,000 cars used to park at the overflow at Scarborough Beach in 2010. Just 1,600 parked there in 2013. As a result, local towns, which get a cut from daily parking rates and not season passes, lost money.
Our investigation found an out-of-state vendor saw their profits soar because of the way the state negotiated a contract with them before these fees increased. But we're told they're working on a new deal as we speak. With the Target 12 investigators, Tim White, Eyewitness News.
Look, we knew the day they doubled the fees that something was going to get messed up. Yes, less people coming to the beach. You'd think, though, when they doubled the fees and the revenue started pouring in, that at least we'd ignore some benefit. Instead, some contractor in Connecticut is benefiting. Speaking of, not knowing what the right hand and the left hand are doing, there's the Chafee administration for you. Thank you very much. All right. This was an interesting development. Now, listen, don't tell anybody, but we record this program late afternoon. We're not live. We're Memorex. But we're contemporary. We're only a couple hours away from when you see it live. Between the time that we recorded the show last night and the time that it aired, this administrator who we had opined about had quit. Here's the story.
At a school committee meeting Monday night, the talk was all about next year's budget, but Eyewitness News was there for a different reason.
This afternoon, you accepted the resignation of Nancy Stephen, and was that something, did you have a conversation with her? Did she come to you?
Susan, I'm going to let the statement stand.
The statement Dr. Lucy is referring to is this. The Providence School Board and Superintendent have directed the Office of Human Resources to check all future applicants' higher education credentials. This reaction stems from an Eyewitness News investigation. We revealed our findings to the Providence School Department and the mayor's office back in April. Eyewitness News learned that a Providence school supervisor got a job making nearly $95,000, a job that required a bachelor's degree. We obtained Nancy Stevenen's resume from the Providence School Department, which lists her college education from Ashley University, an online university that sells college degrees for a few $100s. No classes or books required, and you get a degree in 10 days. The U.S. Department of Education tells us Ashley University is not accredited. Also, as a result of this case, the Providence School Board announced it will now audit the credentials of other non-certified, non-union personnel within the district.
Just to ensure that this doesn't happen again, or that it hasn't happened in the past, although we know it's an isolated incident.
Now, when the school board initially learned of Stevenen's questionable degree, they told her her employment was contingent on her getting a degree from an accredited university. However, as we reported, Stevenen instead resigned.
Yeah, interesting development. And of course, Mayor Taveras yesterday was defending the idea that she remain employed, backing the superintendent's decision, and when she resigned, he said that's the right thing to do. Woo! When it comes to the politics of a governor's race in the administration of a city. By the way, Susan calls it a degree. I've been calling it a degree, and then I have to kick myself and say, you know what? It's not a degree. It's a phantom website. We got to find a new word for this whole thing, because it ain't no degree. I'll tell you that much. Hopefully, we don't have a bunch of Ashley University grads in the Providence school system. Maybe we can get the superintendent of schools in here to provide a stoic response. She's awful stoic. Have you noticed when she... No, I got to stick to my statement. Next item. Yeah, this is crazy, man. This is getting to be a real problem. Here's the Washington Post headline. Outrage over the VA allegations growing. The Obama administration has a lot to answer for. So does the director. But Jay Carney says, don't worry, everything's under control.
I think as a general matter, there is no question that this administration has asked for and received and overseen the disbursement of and implementation of enhanced funding for our veterans through the VA because of the President's commitment to improve services for our veterans. There is no question that there are challenges that still need to be met at the VA, and Secretary Shinseki addressed those challenges in his testimony last week.
Let me tell you something. They're going to get some answers on who was waiting for help and passed away. That is unacceptable. Our veterans, birth to life focus needs a whole lot more work. I will tell you this, though. My father-in-law, 80 years of age, in pretty good health, sees the VA on a regular basis and expressed surprise to me that people across the country were having trouble with services because he, living in New England, has never had any difficulty at all. So obviously it's an inconsistent thing going on with the VA. Know this is government-run health care. Know that. And if this problem doesn't get fixed, it could bode not too well for what we might be seeing down the pike with a much bigger government-run healthcare program. Be aware. And finally, for those of you who are just missing your Bruins, don't forget about the P Bruins. Now look, I'm gloating. My Rangers are up 2-0 over Montreal right now. But right here at home, we got the P Bruins. Unfortunately, they won't be home for Game 7 of their conference semifinal game against Wilkes-Barre, but they tied that series up last night and play tomorrow night in Pennsylvania. Should they win that, they'll be back in action at the Dunk and continuing to pursue the Calder Cup. The P Bruins should not get short shrift. That's great hockey. So put on your Bruins, whatever, P or B, jersey, sweater, and get on down to the Dunk. All right. Gary Sasse, real smart guy in this 38 studio stuff and some interesting developments. Let's tackle it next. All right, I want to dig in with Mr. Sasse, Gary Sasse, from the Hassenfeld Leadership, the Institute for Leadership at Bryant College. He'll explain it. It's a lot of words. But he's a really smart guy in this 38 Studios thing. Here's the package, though, from Eyewitness News last night on the latest in the investigative side of 38.
These emails, dated July 1st, 2010, were sent from 38 Studios insiders right before the $75 million EDC guaranteed loan was a done deal. In one email, 38 Studios CEO Jen McLean expressed concern about how much money the company would actually get from the $75 million loan, writing in part, "We were also not expecting to lose as much as $10 million net." Tom Zaccagnino, a 38 Studios board member, responded, "I really do not think we should highlight the fact that we might be undercapitalized. Won't go over well with the staff or board." 38 Studios filed for bankruptcy in June of 2012, shortly after the state sued the architects of the deal. At the heart of the case, who knew what and when did they know it? According to an affidavit we also uncovered today, former Governor Donald Carcieri believed the video game would be fully funded. The affidavit saying, in part, "I understood that the proceeds of the EDC loan authorized by the resolution, together with other cash available or to become available to 38 Studios, as set forth in the 38 Studios financial projections, would be sufficient to fund the so-called MMOG game, Project Copernicus, to completion."
Very interesting. Gary Sasse is from the Hassenfeld Institute at Bryan University. It's a leadership institute. Second time on the show. Thanks for coming in.
My pleasure.
There's some stuff happening in New York right now with House leadership that is really in your wheelhouse, and that's what I want to talk about because you've been doing a lot of really insightful analysis as to the considerations for whether to pay these bonds or not. But as a former director of revenue and Rhode Island Economic Development Corporation guy and a guy who understands Don Carcieri pretty well, that affidavit that he talked about, I don't know if you have an opinion. I say to myself, what he's talking about there is whatever the proceeds of the loan the EDC finally gave to 38 Studios, he was expecting other sources of revenue, including perhaps the tax credits that are at question here at all. You take it the same way?
I don't know. I just know what you know of the affidavit. I never discussed 38 Studios with Governor Carcieri, and I think it's really important to get to the bottom of who knew what, why, and when. And it's been over a year, and we still haven't gotten to the bottom, nor have we made a good faith effort to do that. So I hope that comes out. What happened is it's very, very simple. The first strike against the people of Rhode Island was a bad economic deal that was poorly structured. If we were going to do this, it should have been a venture capital deal. The second strike was inept administration of the loan. You know, students in Banking 101 at Bryant would have done a better job managing this loan. And the third strike we haven't swung yet, and it's whether we do the due diligence and protect the taxpayers' interest in going forward.
In terms of what we do about the debt we potentially may owe to the bondholders.
Correct, that's correct.
All right. I will remind you what I've said about Don Carcieri. I don't think he's dirty. I will eat my hat, but I don't think he was paying attention. And the idea, I think he let the General Assembly do their business, and that business may not be clean, you know, when it comes to tax credits and all that kind of stuff. But I know that's not your wheelhouse, and that's not where you want to be on this.
But I think it's just during the Watergate scandal in the White House when Howard Baker said, "What did the president know and when did he know it?" The people of Rhode Island deserve an answer so we can restore confidence of who knew what, when, and why, and what actions they took. And I'm looking forward to somebody, hopefully the legislature, opening that book up.
All right, good. All right, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pause here because there's a development. We've got some Rhode Islanders in New York trying to figure out some important answers. It's something that I'm sure Gary Sasse thinks is a good idea, but is it timely? Stay with us. So something interesting is happening as we speak. Our House Speaker and the Majority Leader are actually en route to New York. Here's a headline. Question of truth and consequences. That was a couple of days ago in the Journal, as the Journal was peppering everybody and their brother under the sun who have a thought on whether to actually pay the $75 million on the 38 Studios debt. Gary Sasse continues with me, and I don't know what the political momentum is in the General Assembly right now for paying that debt. We've had hearings. We had a consultant for 75 grand come in and tell the Chafee administration that the watch that they had on had set the right time, seems to me. But I'm going to say, a little birdie once said to me, you know what, the General Assembly leadership ought to just go down by themselves to New York and ask some questions.
Absolutely. You know,
Tweet, tweet. A little birdie here.
Birdie.
I'm exposing him now. We talked about that privately.
No, I've talked about it publicly before at a hearing of the committee last week, too.
Oh, that's right. I know you were going to do that. This is a good thing that they are doing, correct?
Well, it's essential. You have all these people who say we should pay or not pay, and I'm not sure anybody has any evidence. And so before I pay $86 million, I would like evidence about the best information to make a decision. And that requires the leadership of the legislature not to believe everything that comes from the administration, not to believe everything that comes from the business community, but go down there, stick their nose in the dirt, and try to get the information. And there are two things they need to do, and they're doing one, and I think it's late, but better late than never. They're going to go sit down with Moody's and Standard & Poor's and try to understand where they're coming from, learn their reaction, you know, talk about the issues Rhode Island faces and the different contingencies. That's essential. The second thing they need to do is to test the market and try to understand what the market reactions are to various scenarios. I am very heartened by the fact that they at least now are going to talk to New York, to talk to the credit rating agencies tonight, and when they come back, let's see what they come up with.
So Moody's and Standard & Poor's, just in case you don't know, haven't been following this, these are the rating agencies that tell you what your financial condition is. They get all sorts of letters. A's good, B's not so good, C's forget, you know, junk bond status. Junk means your rates are through the roof, and they regulate they analyze your financial health, and that impacts the interest you pay on the borrowing that you do. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, but see, what we've been getting is two things are happening. The first thing is we thought we were selling moral obligation bonds. It turns out that according to Standard & Poor's and Moody's, all obligations, whether they're moral obligations, general revenue bonds, revenue bonds, are bona fide debt. And if you don't pay your bona fide debt, you get penalized in the market. So that's the first issue. And
so their definition's different than ours.
Well, their definition is debt is an obligation, and they protect bondholders, and they expect you to pay your debt. And if you renege on paying that debt, there are adverse conditions. What we have to find out is what those adverse conditions are and what the costs are compared to not paying.
They've been hedging their bets. Ted Nesi did an incredible interview with the Standard & Poor's guy. It's online at WPRI.com, and all the guy did was just jump around and talk about, you know, the fear factor and what they might be considering and da-da-da-da. Do you think that our General Assembly leadership, not financial guys, one's a lawyer, what's John DeSimundo? They're both lawyers, but they go down there and say, listen, Moody's, listen, Standard & Poor's, here's a scenario. We don't pay first-year debt. Tell us what our bond rating is going to be.
Standard & Poor's, Moody's will not answer hypotheticals. They have to have a conversation with Moody's and Standard & Poor's discussing the situation, trying to get a better understanding, as you and I are sitting across the table, of what you're saying and what the implications of the meaning are. I did this in 1981 when Providence was about to go bankrupt, and I was chairman of the review commission that was overseeing the city. I got on a plane, went down to see the rating agencies with others, and came back and had a pretty good feel of what they were thinking about. Didn't go down to ask them what the rating was. They won't tell you. They won't answer hypotheticals. Didn't go down to why.
So is it a kabuki? See, you're a smart financial guy. What's the Speaker and the Majority Leader going to do? A little kind of,
they're well prepared. I testified before the House Oversight Committee. I met with the Speaker a couple of times, made suggestions of 15 or 16 points to follow. I have complete confidence that there is only things to be gained, nothing to be lost by having a conversation, asking questions, and that way you can evaluate your opponent. If you and I were in a chess match, I'm not going to look at you in the face. I'm going to try to figure out what you're thinking. You're not going to tell me what you're thinking,
right.
And that's part of this process.
Well, I think, you know, your input, both privately and publicly, I think has been valuable. I'm glad that the House Speaker is taking, you know, some responsibility. I mean, it's a little bit of a separation of powers issue anyway. You know, the General Assembly is the ultimate decider on who's going to fund this thing.
So it's unusual for a Speaker of the House to go meet with the rating agencies. But at the end of the day, the Speaker of the House is responsible for appropriating money. And it is unfortunate that it has gotten to this point, because there are things that I think the Chafee administration could have been doing, maybe not successfully, but could have tried, and now it's come to the point of pay it, and this is based on this information, and the Speaker has an obligation to the million people of the state to try to get to the bottom of it.
So with a half a minute or so, projection on where you think this will go?
I do have a thought where it would go, and I'm going to hold that counsel to myself, because I don't want to influence anybody's thinking. I want the facts to get out. I want to hear what the Speaker has to say when he gets back from New York. I want to hear what the markets have to say, and then a week from now, I'll be happy to talk to you about that.
You know what? Well, programming instinct. So stay tuned. We'll have Mr. Sasse back, and we'll see. I'll try to get it off the record so I know whether he was thinking the right thing.
Off the record? What's that?
Your state of mind when we come back. Stay with us. I wish I had time. This stuff goes behind the scenes. Your state of mind, 228-1886. I have to tell you, I'm so happy that my producer, Jess, that you bring Gary Sasse into the studio today. Thank God she did that, or I would have been completely lost in this story. Here's an email or a Facebook post. I don't know. This guy, Angel, call a press conference. Look squarely into the camera. Tell the unemployed men and women who spent at least 4 years and tens of thousands of dollars going to college to get their bachelor's degrees that they are all suckers. They're going to spend $700 and a few hours on the phone instead, said Dave. He was frustrated over that Ashley University story, and a lot of people were. Hey, it's resolved for now. Hopefully there aren't any more. All right. We will see you tomorrow night at 7:30 on MyRI TV and on the radio tomorrow on WPRO at noon until 3. Until then, have a great night.